Will Taiwan become Xi Jinping's biggest mistake ever if an invasion turns into an economic, military, and political disaster for China? Can China overcome 100 miles of sea and just 13 viable landing beaches? Or would Taiwan turn the crossing into a nightmare? Could she even hide the huge military buildup needed for an attack, giving the United States and Taiwan time to prepare? Would a blockade of Taiwan cripple the island? Or could it boomerang and hit China's trade-dependent economy just as hard? Xi Jinping may face an existential gamble if he orders a full-scale invasion of Taiwan, risking not only military failure but a severe challenge to his rule. A failed invasion could become China's biggest strategic mistake, experts told The Sun, especially if the PLA suffers heavy losses without securing a quick victory. Former British diplomat Charlie Parton said failure in Taiwan could even threaten Xi's rule, triggering a damaging backlash from within mainland China. Parton said severe economic disruption and heavy wartime losses could fuel public anger in China in a prolonged conflict. Charlie Parton OBE said, and I quote, "It would be an existential gamble on Taiwan. If Xi fails, then he risks being swept away by the reaction from the mainland. The economy is likely to collapse and people will be angry by losing their children in war. So it would be one enormous risk, and I would be very surprised if he were to take it without being close to 100% sure he would win in Taiwan." Unquote. China's biggest problem could be concealing the massive buildup required for an invasion, because Taiwan and its allies would be watching for every sign of preparation. Beijing would need to assemble huge numbers of troops, landing ships, supplies, aircraft, and missile support, creating a military concentration that would be difficult to disguise. Roughly 100 miles of sea separate China and Taiwan, forcing any invading force to cross the Taiwan Strait before it can even begin fighting on land. Only about 13 beaches may be suitable for major amphibious landings, giving Taiwanese defenders a limited number of likely invasion routes to monitor and fortify. Landing zones could face concentrated Taiwanese fire, as defenders would be able to direct artillery, missiles, drones, and ground forces towards predictable beaches. Airborne forces would be highly vulnerable during deployment, because transport aircraft and helicopters could be targeted before troops safely reach their objectives. Growing drone capabilities could threaten incoming Chinese troops, with low-cost unmanned systems able to detect, strike, and disrupt forces at sea and on shore. Defenders will have time to prepare likely landing zones, particularly if China's large-scale troop movements and naval buildup are detected well before an assault begins. The United States could gain time to reinforce Taiwan, deploy regional assets, and coordinate support with allies if Beijing's invasion preparations become visible early. Amphibious forces would remain exposed at sea, where slow-moving landing ships and transport vessels could be vulnerable to missiles, submarines, mines, and air attacks. Beijing could try a blockade instead of an invasion, but that option would carry major economic risks because Taiwan Strait disruption could damage China's own economy. The Taiwan Strait carries a major share of regional trade, linking Asian economies with shipping routes serving Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and global markets. A blockade would disrupt international shipping routes, forcing commercial vessels to reroute, raising freight costs and creating uncertainty across regional supply chains. Taiwan's economy would face severe disruption, as restrictions on shipping could threaten energy imports, trade flows, and access to vital goods. China's deeply connected economy would also take a hit, because disruption near Taiwan would affect Chinese exports, imports, factories, and broader commercial confidence. Economic contraction could drive unemployment higher in China, creating a domestic political problem if companies lose orders and factories reduce production. Domestic instability could increase pressure on Beijing, particularly if a Taiwan crisis produces sustained economic pain without delivering a rapid political victory. Capturing Taiwan would not guarantee Beijing could easily control the island afterwards, especially if Taiwanese forces and civilians continue resisting after major territory is taken. Taiwan's trained forces could continue fighting after Beijing captured major territory, shifting the conflict from an invasion into a difficult and protracted resistance campaign. A months-long or years-long insurgency could turn a quick victory into a costly occupation, draining Chinese resources and prolonging military casualties far beyond the initial assault. Such a scenario could become politically damaging for Xi back in China, according to Parton, if an occupation begins to look like an endless and costly war. She would first need to believe the PLA could win very quickly in Taiwan, according to Parton, without becoming trapped in a long and unpredictable conflict. The PLA would need overwhelming military power and proven operational effectiveness, giving Beijing confidence that it can overcome Taiwan's defenses across land, sea, and air. China would need to avoid becoming trapped in a long war, where guerrilla resistance and sustained military operations could undermine the benefits of capturing Taiwan. She would need to believe Washington cannot intervene in time, even if the United States decides that defending Taiwan is necessary to protect its regional position. Beijing would have to prepare for sweeping Western sanctions, including measures that could restrict access to markets, technology, finance, supplies, and strategic materials. China's economy would need greater self-reliance, allowing it to absorb major trade shocks and sustain production if foreign companies and governments impose restrictions. China would need leverage over Western resources and technology, giving Beijing the ability to counter economic pressure before taking such a high-risk military decision. Until those conditions exist, analysts expect Beijing to keep using non-military pressure, rather than launch an invasion that could endanger Xi's position and China's stability. China could instead try to convince Taiwan that unification is inevitable and irresistible, using military pressure, economic influence, political messaging, and sustained coercion rather than open war.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you'll have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a banking dynasty meets tides of world history, intrigue, and a dash of myth?
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.